And welcome to this week's episode of Unfiltered. Now, this week we're joined by a friend of the show. It's Kyle from the O'Reilly Show. Hi, Kyle. Welcome back.
Nice to see you again, Lee. Okay.
You're not too bad. For those who missed the first episode, the link is in the description, so please go back and check it out. But we are a new name now. We're now Unfiltered instead of Non-Identity. So we've changed the format a little bit. So before we get into finding out what you've been up to, I've got a couple of quick-fire get-to-know-you questions, if that's all right.
Yeah, fire away.
Okay, so first one. If you could trade lives with a character for a day, who would it be and why?
Elvis. Elvis was a good example of coming from nothing to everything and losing everything in the process of having everything. Elvis was a fantastic role model. I don't think there was a woman alive at the time that didn't fall in love with him. He was a very talented young man. He came from poverty, and unfortunately, if you know the story, the whole showbiz and the pressure got to him. So a real inspiration, Elvis. Sad story more than it is an inspiration, but yeah, I'd say Elvis to answer your question.
I actually found out the other day that he turned down the role for Grease. He was meant to play Danny Zuko.
Okay, interesting.
Next one is, if you could only eat one food for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Chickpeas.
I'm not a lover of chickpeas.
I don't think a lot of people are, but
No.
I think if it's for the rest of my life, I've got to think of nutrition, protein, energy, and a tin of chickpeas will definitely get you out of trouble.
Is there a way you can prepare chickpeas with giving them a better taste? Is it the way people prepare the foods more than...
I'd say so. I mean, a lot of seasoning with chickpeas, they're quite bland on their own, aren't they? They taste like peanuts, I suppose. But, you can make hummus out of them, falafel. There is a few things you can do with it, but for the rest of your life, I think anything will get boring after a month for Sundays, Lee.
100%. If you could have a chat with one species of animal, what animal would it be?
That's a good question. I'd say an eagle, because an eagle is, king of the sky. It sees things from all angles. And yeah, it'd be a very interesting conversation. Depends how old the eagle is, I suppose, but just to see what differences it's noticed in its time being in the eye in the sky.
That's a good answer, because usually I guess say cats or dogs, so it's nice to have a different animal.
Fair enough.
What's the craziest thing you've seen on the internet lately?
I think most things on the internet are crazy, not for the better of humanity, Lee, but I'd say there's quite a lot of things. I think what's been happening over in America with the fires, that's been shocking to see. Yeah, I'd say that's the craziest thing.
And this one's quite a difficult one, and this is a newer one that I've just chucked in. Yeah. If you could get rid of one crime forever, but you had to commit that crime once for that to happen, what crime would that be?
Growing marijuana. Okay. It's medicine if it's used appropriately. I mean, there's other crimes, but the least harm to people, I suppose, is that stuff. Yeah, and I've tried it in the past, and it does not agree with me. But if I had to do it, if I had to get high as a kite again for one more time, I think it would save a lot of people. Yeah.
And I had a brother who died of a heroin overdose 8 years ago, but he started off with marijuana when he was young. So I think that's sort of the route down that path, because like you said, once that high goes, you're then chasing the next high, and it just leads on and leads on. So I think it's a good drug to get rid of. Yeah,
definitely.
Right, so that was the get to know you question. So like we said, we're a year on. We're both a lot further down our journey. People will tell the difference between night and day if they watched the last episode. So what have you been up to over the last year?
Yeah, it's gone quick, hasn't it, Lee? I know. I was when we were messaging the other day, I thought, wow, a year's gone by already. It came up on my stories as well on TikTok, and I thought, wow, a year's just flown by. It's been a good year. There's been ups and downs. Last year was very productive. For the first half of the year, and then bad news came along, I suppose, but we took it on the chin. I got diagnosed with skin cancer.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, do you know, Lee, it's funny, and I appreciate your kind words. A lot of people were like, that's what most people are saying, sorry to hear this, sorry to hear that. And it's like, I suppose for me, I switched off from it, and I started to think to myself, what has caused this? Because I've got Irish, I've got fair, pale skin. They're saying that's what it is. Even the sun in the UK is what can cause it. So you know, very insensitive, the dermatologist who I dealt with. He just, yep, you've got cancer. The way he told me, Lee, was like telling me a football result at the weekend.
Yeah.
And there was a nurse in there. She was shadowing him. And she goes, are you okay? I said, I'm fine. I said, good job, I'm not scared of dying. And I said, you know, what type of cancer is it? And then obviously he's broke it down. And it was just skin cancer here. So I had the surgery there at the back end of last year. But yeah, I mean, I think for me, it was a bit of a light bulb moment. Never gone under surgery, touch wood. And, you know, I know it's minor compared to what a lot of other people are going through. But yeah, when you hear the big C, it's just like the whole dynamics change mentally. So the back end of last year was a bit of a slump, really, progress wise. I've got an issue of a hernia in my leg and like a bag of broken biscuits last year. So I was dealing with that at the same time. So it was kind of frustrating because every Sunday I get out and I do my hikes and I go for walks. I was still continuing to do that even with the hernia, the groin hernia, because, you know, time waits for no man, as they say. But yeah, just glad to get the back end of last year out of the way, really. It made me appreciate life a lot more. It's definitely changed the dynamics, like I said before, mentally. So my whole outlook now in terms of looking after myself more. And I'm very cautious anyway in terms of diet and creams that I put on my body. But some things, no matter how much effort you put into it, some things are unfortunately out of your control.
No, exactly. You can just sort of roll with the punches, really, can't you? And just deal with what's in front of you.
Yeah, definitely. So I've had a lot of time last year just to like prepare for this year. But yeah, overall last year was a very good year, very good year. You know, a few changes like I've just mentioned, but changes for the better. I always see the positive, and you know, like I say, friends and family were like, "Sorry to hear, sorry to hear." And I know it's the most respectful thing to say, but for me, there was nothing to be sorry about. It was just a case of right, get it out of the way now. And you know, I'm grateful for everyone that's helped, and obviously the surgeons who've removed it. So very grateful.
No, good. And I'm glad it's all cleared up and you're on the mend.
Yeah,
So,
that's it.
and another thing we didn't touch on last time was you're also a vegan activist. For people who
Yeah.
don't know, what is veganism?
So veganism is reducing your harm and exposure and use of animals or animal products to a realistic minimal. Yeah, I mean, even myself to this daily, you believe it or not, going into certain takeaways and stuff, you'll say I'm vegan, and then they'll offer you fish or things with
Yeah,
eggs in them, and it's like they just don't get it. Um, yes, big, very close to my chest being a vegan activist. And to be honest with you, like I say, back end of last year, I've not done much. Even just doing a TikTok, I was keeping up with a TikTok because that's something
yeah.
I can do from home. But a few plans were cancelled, obviously. But this year we're going to go full throttle with the activism. I've got a few friends on TikTok and other social media platforms, and yeah, I need to get in the sticks a bit more with the activism. As you know yourself, and more the last year, and the main drive for me on social media is to raise frequency, mental health for men and women, but predominantly for the men's side of things, to be a voice for the men and come forward. But the vegan activism is something that I've not put on the back foot. It's just, I think offline I can do more effective, if that makes sense. So yeah, I mean there will be an aspect for it online, but I just feel as though online there's a lot of trolls even for normal content, as you know yourself, Lee.
Yeah.
So yeah, moving forward this year, especially coming towards the summer, getting out more into communities, into the public, and just you know, raising awareness.
Coming to the end of Child Mental Health Week. Um, See, to me, working in education is a hard one because is it good that children are labelling themselves at such a young age? If a child at 8 or 9 reads they've got anxiety and depression, they're going to walk around telling everyone it's okay, I've got anxiety and depression. Well, I
Yeah.
don't know if they're developed enough to really understand what it means. So being someone who's promoting mental health, how do you think we can better educate and support young people in that field, other than putting labels on and his medication?
Yeah, well, I just think, you know, the mental health aspect, especially with, I mean, what age group are we talking here? Are we talking from the age of, say, teenagers or from the age of, say, 6+? You
Well, I
know,
think young people learn about mental health from the age of 6 all the way
right.
through, which is like, I think telling a 6-year-old, like, it's okay to label yourself, in my opinion, is quite crazy. Like,
Yeah, I totally disagree with it, Lee. And I think with everything that's going on, I think we touched on it last time with, you know, the LGBTQ movement, and full respect to it. Happiness has got no face. But I do feel as though in terms of mainstream education now, I've been reading articles over the last couple of months, and it is quite worrying and concerning. essentially, to answer your question, Lee, it's not a one-word answer. I do feel as though kids from up until the age of 16, realistically, I mean, you know, from the age of say from 7, they say kids understand what they're doing and they have a, you know, their conscious thought process. But ultimately, that's not to ignore the fact it can be easily influenced. So if you've got, for example, two 10-year-old friends, for example, Bill and Ben, for example, and Ben comes in to school and he sees his friend Bill. Bill's all happy, and then Ben says, "Oh, Bill, I've got depression." And then Bill's like, "I don't even know what that is. I think I've heard it before." And then he said, "Well, everyone's got it now, so I might as well have it." I think that's how easy it is to be influenced at them precious ages. So I
Yeah,
don't agree with it. And I think with the whole transgender, LGBTQ being introduced into schools at them ages there, hypothetically for the example, um, I'm not saying it's wrong because you have to be careful. I respect all listeners, but ultimately, if you don't understand what left to right is, how can you then make a decision what you identify as? It's quite worrying, and ultimately, the mainstream education system and quite the anarchist mentally towards a lot of things, Lee. So I don't agree with it on the best of times. So in
yeah,
terms of depression and kids labeling themselves, parents have no say anymore in schools, and I'm sure you know this yourself working in
100%,
that
yeah.
industry. One of my friends said a few months ago, and it was very alarming. It's always stuck in my head. He said he's got two twins and they're 6 years old, and they were told in school, if you've got any trouble at home with mummy or daddy, you don't have to tell them about it. You can come and tell us. And I thought, wow, you're telling kids to basically not tell your parents what your issues are, not to regard them as your parents, and essentially go against them. So, I mean, there's loads of grey areas with it. Child's mental health. I mean, it is a real thing, of course. If they're coming from a broken background, there's no strong relationship between mother and father. If there's any abuse or domestic violence going on, of course, I experienced episodes as a child, but I never once went around saying I was depressed in school. It was just the way it was. So times have changed, Lee, for the worst in a lot of areas, and it's quite worrying. And kids, unfortunately, they will grab onto it and they'll take full advantage of having that power given to them at such a young age.
Yeah, and totally agree with what you're saying as well, a lot about being influenced. Social media again has a big part to play in that because young people are just accessing so much content at their fingertips. The wrong videos or the wrong message gets into their hands, and they're influenced for years further to come.
Exactly. And this is what I did a podcast a few weeks ago with a lad called Lee as well. Funny enough,
Yeah,
I mentioned it. You know, the power of social media, not just for adults. I think across the board, anyone who has access to it. I think if you had a pet cat or a dog on it, had the ability to watch it, it would do some
yeah,
damage to a cat and dog. You know. But on a serious level, though, I do think it is worrying. I'm very cautious of it, and I do see I've got friends who've got kids, and it's easier just to give them the iPad and just go and play on your phone for a bit.
yeah.
It's worrying. It's very, very worrying. And technology can be our best friend and it can also be our worst enemy. And it's having that balance with anything. I think a lot of parents now, not to speak for every parent, because I know some parents hold them true old school values, but a lot of young parents, it's easy for them just to, yeah, raise your iPad, here's your phone. It keeps them out of the way for a couple of hours. It makes life easier for the parents, but what they don't know is they're setting them up to fail through doing that. And again, it all comes down to balance. But social media is definitely it's poison in a lot of ways.
Yeah, no, 100%. And as you said earlier as well, you're focusing on promoting mental health for men. With
Yeah.
mental health being so openly spoken about over the last 4 or 5 years, why is there still a stigma, especially for men, around mental health, do you think?
Yeah, again, it's not a one word answer, and it all comes
Yeah,
down to preference. I feel as though men in general should be alpha male. Every man should be, of Viking statue, should be strong, physically aesthetic, and intimidating character. And it's not always the case. I've got friends, male friends, that are very in touch with their feminine side, not to question their sexuality. Um, and what I mean by that is there's not one approach, there's not one solution for men's mental health. My inbox, I get several messages weekly from men reaching out. They've watched clips or they've watched a podcast and they're like, it'd be great to get on the show. And you look at the profile and you see them, they're bursting into tears. It's clear signs for a cry for help. And I just feel as though there's not one solution for it. for example, Lee, me and you could have the same problem going on within our minds. How you deal with it emotionally and psychologically is going to be very different to me. So I do feel as though, like you say, the stigma is, and there's this, there's a lot of energy going around. Basically, men shouldn't cry and they should just, chin up and take it on the chin. But ultimately, we have emotions, and it's massively overlooked. Men are seen as providers, not emotional beings, whereas women, they're seen as emotional creatures more so than men. And I'm not saying that I'm comparing myself to a woman, because we're completely different in a lot of ways, but we're very similar. So it's a very complex subject. It's something that I'm very passionate about, as you know. But yeah, I've been to open circles, and we are judgmental. It's part of human nature. I've gone into open circles and you see big lads coming in, tattoos on the neck. He looks like he's on the gear, steads, and he breaks down in tears. And you're thinking, that wouldn't make me cry. And other lads are thinking, that's not that big of a situation, but to him it is. So it's respecting each individual case that's going on, but ultimately it's trying to find a one fits all solution, which I don't think there ever will be, but
No.
making it inviting for men, regardless of what's going on, to be comfortable enough at least to come forward and speak about it.
But it's weird because obviously over the last 2 years, I've met so many different people, and a lot of people have been like life coaches and into the mental health. I met yourself for that. But as you know, in December, I was having a down December because we was meant to record before Christmas. And it wasn't until you reached out and said, about setting up the episode, I then said, well, I'm having a downtime at the moment. So even though we've had this connection for over a year, I also know other people. I still felt I couldn't reach out. Even though in a way on this platform, I'm trying to promote for people to reach out.
Yeah.
So it's weird how we should know what we should do, but we're still internally finding it hard within ourselves to still do it.
Yeah, no, 100%. And listen, you could have all the tools and access to help around you, but ultimately there is no right or wrong way to deal with it. It's your coping mechanism, and it's as long as you've been great now, and obviously to what depth the issues you were going through, that's only inside your mind, but you got through it. And it's, again, there's not one solution for everyone, and sometimes you feel like, you switch off from the world essentially, but that's what that's the way you survive through it. And if it works for you, mate, then you do it. You don't owe anybody an explanation, or you don't have to justify yourself to anybody. I know you're a family man yourself, and they understand at the time when you were going through your episode, should we call it, they understand as well. So it's I mean, that can put pressure on people as well. It's like, I've had my moments and I withdraw from people and it's not because I don't care or I've got any issues with anybody. Like yourself, Lee, if I've got something going on and I feel as though, like, I recognize more than anybody else I'm not myself, I don't feel 100%, the last thing I want to do is put the mask on and go and engage with friends and family and make out like nothing's going on. I'm just lying to myself. So I'll just withdraw. I'll kindly reject plans, and I'll just do my own thing, and I'll just do what makes me happy. But at the same time, it's almost like, then people, well, what's up with you, Lee? What's up with you, Kyle? You're not being in touch. And it's like, listen, I'll be in touch when I'm ready. It's almost like you have to justify yourself to people. And really, it's just people, your friends and family, obviously reaching out to show you that they care. But, it's like, you are on your own, regardless how big your family is, how big your friendship circle is. Ultimately, when you're closing your eyes before you go to bed, you could have all the people that you love around you. When you close your eyes, you're on your own, left with your thoughts. So you have to do what you have to do to get through it.
No, 100%. So as we said, you had to put things on the back burner because obviously everything that was going on last year. So what is the plan for this year?
This year, Lee, I'm just looking to go 100 miles an hour in the most productive way possible. Podcast, more public speaking, more interaction, raising frequency, and just being on everyone's screens, just to reach out to as many people as possible.
I know last time we spoke, you sort of were thinking about doing things abroad as well. Is that still in the pipeline, or?
Yeah, 100%, Lee, 100%. The UK is crippled beyond repair, in my opinion.
That's a whole different episode.
Yeah. We'll have to extend the time on that one. But no, I mean, ultimately, the plan is definitely to leave the UK. Well-travelled many, many years ago. I've got lots of travel under my belt, and I've got people that I love and care for here. But ultimately, there's only not to be morbid, there's only space for me in my coffin, Lee. And the way I look at it, my calling is definitely overseas. That's not to say that the work won't continue. Of course it will. If anything, it'll continue more so overseas. Where overseas is yet, I don't know yet. There's a few places in mind, but you know yourself now. Well, look, February already. Time goes quick. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely in the plans. We're working towards that, and if it's not by the back end of this year, by next summer, 100% definitely.
And we was also talking about last time about a festival you wanted to do, like bringing loads of people together for mental health and stuff like that. Is that something
Yeah.
that could still happen over the next couple of years?
Yeah, well, you know, funny enough, I was speaking to somebody back in November last year. A few people that I've done the radio with and the outreach teams, and they're all for it. Now, I was in talks with a farmer here in Manchester. He's got hundreds of acres of land, it's huge acres of land, and he's very interested in the project itself. And yeah, it's just about getting a bit of funding for it, Lee. Essentially, it's getting funding. The councils are quite strict on budgeting, but because there is
Yeah.
that mental health behind it. A friend was saying to me just before Christmas, the best thing you could do is probably look to get yourself a charity set up, which is something that I am looking into. It's not straightforward, which I'm sure you understand, Lee. You've got to jump through so many loopholes to get that charity registered number. But once you have that, then obviously you're in a position then to reach out to companies, you know, like-minded companies that would support and obviously get a bit of sponsorship and promotion for them in return. And then, yeah, so there is a lot of ideas around it. It's just not as straightforward as I thought it was going to be. And the costs involved, it's
Crazy.
nowhere near. Yeah, what I budgeted for, nowhere near. But that's definitely something that'd be a dream to have something and just bring the whole community together in a positive
Yeah.
light. Some great music, great people, the culture. You know, mental health doesn't affect a certain race group, religious group. It affects all of us.
No, 100%. Well, it's been lovely catching up with you. I've got another little game to play before we
Yeah.
finish up, if you're up for that. So
No
these are
worries.
Would You Rather cards that we've got over Christmas. So I'm just
Okay.
going to mix them up and then we'll see what comes out. So we've
Okay.
got, so would you rather have toes for fingers or fight off 20 duck-sized unicorns every time you go to the bathroom?
I'd go for the second one, Lee.
Yeah, but we're getting old. We go to the bathroom a lot. Imagine having to have a fight every time.
I'd have to get a commode. Yeah, try and get around it.
No, I think I'd go with the toes. I think for fingers, I think I could cope with that a lot more.
Good luck to you.
Next one is: would you rather get bitten by a dog every time you go outside, or feel like you are sitting on pins every time you sit down?
Yeah, again, the second one. Dog bites are not nice things to have. I don't know how many of them I could take.
The problem is I work in a school, so I'm sitting down a lot. So I think I'd go for the dog bites because at least I could direct where I get bit.
Fair enough.
And the last two are have everything smell bad forever or have roller skates for feet.
Oh, so random these answers, aren't these options? Yeah. I'd have the rollerblades for feet, yeah.
Yeah, same here. I think I don't like bad smells. Well, Carl, it's been lovely catching up. And like I've said to you before, you're welcome on any time you want to. Before we go, I've got one last question. If you could be remembered for one word and one word only, what would it be and why?
Sincere. And the reason for that is because I feel as though a lot of people that are doing this motivational life coach, mental health, they're not sincerely, they're not speaking from a place of experience. I don't ever touch on subjects or matters that I've not personally been through myself. And I think a lot of people are just trying to make money off people's vulnerability, and it infuriates me like anything. I do a lot on a voluntary basis, and I'll continue to do that. And yeah, just being sincere and genuine with the message.
Well, thank you again so much for your time, guys. Please check out our first episode that's in the link. Go over and hit subscribe to the O'Reilly Show. That will be in the link as well. And like I said, Carl, anytime, please just message and we'll sit back and have a load of would you rather questions. Thank you again.
Definitely. Fantastically. Thank you for having me on. And it's always good to see you, mate.